Hey, Pastor Tarun here. Welcome to Authentic Church. It's so good to have you with us. We really pray that this sermon blesses you and helps you to experience the authentic love of Jesus Christ in your life today. Hey, before we get into the message, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button so that we can keep you up to date with the latest sermons every week? All right, here's the message.
And I was thinking about today. I thought, you know what can I talk about? And it seems like if there's one thing that when you meet someone, if there's one thing that you know that people will always talk about, no matter if you know them or not, no matter where you meet them, no matter what time of the year it is, there's one thing that we all seem to bring into conversation at some point, and it's the weather, isn't it? How's the weather today? And I don't know about you, the last couple of weeks have been cold in Brisbane. I was down in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, and it was colder in Brisbane when I left than when it was in Melbourne when I arrived, which is unheard of. I moved to Brisbane to get away from Melbourne weather. But winter, I have found, and I don't know if you find this, winter is a time when often things feel a little bit harder, don't they? It's a little bit harder to get out of bed. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to get the jobs done that we need to get done. You've got shorter days, less daylight. Sometimes it's hard to even get your joy on. Has anybody found that winter sometimes can affect your mood? You know, there's actually a scientific reason for that. Because there's less sunlight. Sunlight helps your sleep patterns and it helps your serotonin, which is your happy hormone. And when you've got less sunlight, you've got less serotonin. And so it actually does make you feel less joyful. And so I was thinking about it, I thought, well, how do we navigate the winters of our life? Because one of the realities that you can't escape, and the Bible even talks about this, is that there's always going to be winter and there's always going to be summer. There's always going to be rain, there's always going to be sunshine, there's always going to be seed, and there's always going to be harvest. We don't escape these things. But I find that when you have times in your life that maybe don't come as easy, that sometimes feel a little bit like you're walking through wet concrete, or maybe it just feels like not as good as it should be. There are some simple things that we can do to actually help us get through those times well. And so I'd like to talk today about navigating the winters of your life. Does that sound okay? Now, for some of you, this will be the actual winter, how to get through the next 3 months, all right? But sometimes we have winters that are metaphorical, don't we? We have times in our life where it feels like things are not fruitful, things are not growing, things are not going the way they should go. There's something I just don't feel myself. And we all have times like that. And I've found that there's 4 things that I have to remind myself of as I navigate these times to help me do life well. And I say remind myself because although I've known about these things for many years, I forget. Sometimes I just slip back into my usual habits of feeling discouraged or not wanting to get out of bed or being in a bad mood or whatever it might be. And so I have to remind myself of some things that help me to get through those difficult seasons in life. And so today I want to share it with you. Maybe it's going to be a reminder. Maybe this will be the first time, but hopefully it will help you navigate the winters of your life. And the first thing I want to say to you is this: when life feels a little bit blue, when life feels a little bit hard to get through, there's one thing that is guaranteed, is you can choose your mood. Let me say that again. You get to choose your mood. There is a psalm in the Bible, Psalm 43 verse 5, which says, "Why so downcast, my soul? Put your hope in the Lord, for I will yet praise him, my God, my Savior." The writer of the Psalms was going through a hard time, and his response was to talk to himself. His response was to say, "Why are you in such a bad mood? What are you so grumpy about? Why don't you put your hope in God? Why don't you choose a different mood? Choose a different attitude?" You see, our choice of our mood is something we can control. We can't always control what's going on around us, but we can control the responses that we have in the way that we think, in the way that we talk. Another psalm, Psalm 103 says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not his benefits." Bless the Lord. He's talking to himself, and he's actually telling himself, hey, buck up. Bless the Lord. Stop being in a bad mood. Think about what God has done for you. Think about the good stuff in your life. You know, whenever you feel discouraged, one of the things that you can do that will guarantee you it will get you out of your blues is this. Sit down and write a list of all the things you can be thankful for. Thankful that I've got a roof over my head. When it was raining this morning, I wasn't sleeping rough on the street. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that even though it was hard to get out of bed, I had a warm bed to be in last night. That's something to be thankful for. Whatever it might be something as simple as I've got a loaf of bread and I made myself toast for breakfast this morning. That's something to be thankful for, because there are hundreds of thousands of people outside of our world that don't necessarily have those things to be thankful for. And so if we remind ourselves every day, what can I be thankful for? How can I choose the mood that I bring into this day? What you will find is it will shape your experiences of life. When I was in my early 20s, I worked in a nursing home, and my job was to basically entertain the elderly residents in the nursing home. And every morning, part of my job was to take the nursing home bus and take any residents that were able to down to the local park to go for a walk. And so we'd open up the bus at 8 o'clock, and I'd be there waiting for the residents to come out to the bus. And they would come out in their various levels of ability to walk. Some of them were on walkers, and some of them were in wheelchairs, and some of them with a stick. And inevitably, the conversation went the same almost every day. Good morning, Margaret. How are you today? Oh, my Lord, it's hot today, isn't it? It is a bit hot, Margaret. It's summer. That's what happens in summer. On you go, Margaret. Good morning, Beth. How are you today? Oh, my Lord, it's hot today. I hope we're going to a park that's got some shade today. Well, we'll find a park with some shade. On you go, Beth. Good morning, Georgia. How are you today? Oh, my Lord, it's so hot. It's 8 o'clock and the sun's already out. How hot is this? This has got to be the hottest summer I've ever had. I said, well, it is pretty hot, but we'll put the air conditioner on and you'll be okay. And then always the last person to get on the bus was John. Now, John was 94 years old. He was in many ways, the one person that probably had the most excuse to complain about things. You know, he was frail. It was not always easy for him to get around. He was getting on in age. But John would always come out, and there was two things you could guarantee with John. Even though he had a walking stick, even though he was hunched over, even though he shuffled and he didn't really walk, he always had like a spring in his step. He never let his physical condition affect the way he interacted with other people. And I would say, good morning, John, how are you? And he said, Tarun, I'm fantastic. How are you today? What a beautiful day. Look at the sun. It's shining. It's going to be a great day. And I said, yes, John, it is, certainly. Well, the next day it might be raining. And we'd go through the same conversation again. How are you, Margaret? Oh, my Lord, the rain. When is this going to stop? This rain is so miserable. We can't walk in the rain. How are you, Beth? Oh, the rain. I wish this rain would stop. How are you, John? Oh, thank God for the rain. These trees really needed it today. They were looking very, very dry. Well, winter would come and the sun would go, and you'd think that would put a smile on some of their faces, but no, you thought wrong. Good morning, Margaret. How are you today? It's freezing today. I can't believe we're going walking in this weather. How are you, Beth? Oh, it's so cold. I couldn't get out of bed this morning. How are you, John? Oh, isn't it beautiful? It's brisk, but I feel alive. I just love being out in this weather. You see, one of the things you could guarantee with John is it didn't matter what the weather was doing, John always chose his mood, and he always chose to be in a good mood. And John taught me a very valuable lesson as a young man. It doesn't matter what's happening around you. You get to choose how you respond. You get to choose how you respond. If you're going through a tough time, I'm not making light of the experience that you are going through. We all have bad days. We all have tough seasons. But in those tough seasons, if you choose your mood, what you will find is that mood starts to affect other people. And that's either good or it's bad. If you're somebody who chooses a grumpy mood every day, well, guess what? you're going to start affecting other people. When I drag myself out of bed and I'm in a bad mood and I grumble at my wife when I get out of bed, and what happens is she'll go and then snap at one of the kids, and then they're in a bad mood, and then they'll start a fight with their brother, then they're both in a bad mood, then one of them will kick the dog, and then the dog's in a bad mood, and before we get out of the house, everybody's in a bad mood. Why? Because I chose to be a grump when I got out of bed. But if I get out of bed in a good mood, and I greet my wife in a pleasant manner, well, it makes her feel good. It puts her in a good mood. She interacts with the kids in a different way. The kids feel in a good mood. Everybody walks out of the door, and it sets your day up to be a little bit more pleasant. Choose your mood. Number 2, if you're struggling in life or you've got those winter blues and you're finding it hard to get through life, learn to find the fun in whatever you are doing. One of the things that I am learning, and I say I'm learning because I'm a recovered cynic, okay? I have a natural tendency to be a little bit jaded about life, all right? I have a natural tendency to be a little bit bleak, and I have to choose to look for the good in life. And beyond my mood, sometimes I've got to choose to have a bit of fun. My wife, on the other hand, she's the exact opposite. She's this bundle of fun everywhere she goes. It doesn't matter who she's with, where she is, what she's doing. She is always bouncing off the walls. She's always looking to have fun. And so one of the things I've had to learn to do is, you know what? You can have fun wherever you are. You can have fun wherever you are. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you learn to find the joy in the experience, what you will find is that it changes the way that you go through life. Ecclesiastes 5:18 says this: find joy in all that you do. Somebody say all. All that you do. That means even when you do the things that you don't like doing. When you do the things that you don't like doing, it's very easy to get into the mood of, oh, not this again. Oh my gosh, do I have to go through? Especially if you have to do something mundane. Has anybody found that? If you're doing something repetitive, if you're doing something over and over again that's not easy to do, we can take that scripture down. Thank you, boys. You've done a great job. What you can do is when you're doing something mundane, you've got to make a game of it. You've got to do something fun because it's too easy to just get into a rut and keep going on and on and on. I remember being on the city hopper with my family when they were very young, and our youngest was probably about 2 or 3 years old. He was just a toddler, okay? And our youngest, Israel, was on this ferry in Brisbane City, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, what a boring job driving this ferry. This guy goes back and forth the same 5 stops over and over and over again. I thought, if I was that guy, I would be so bored. As I was sitting there, as if he read my mind, we were in the middle of the river, and he stopped the ferry. He turned the engine off, and I said, oh, hello, what's going on here? Something's wrong. And he turned around and he said, you. And he points at Israel, who was sitting on my lap. And I'm going, me? And he goes, no, not you, the kid. And he said, you, come up here. And Israel's like looking. He's 3 years old. He's having the best time of his life. He's on a boat for the first time. And so he toddles up the front of the boat. Now the whole ferry, which was packed with tourists, all stopped what they were doing. They stopped taking photos of outside, and they all turned their cameras on the front wheelhouse where this man picked up a 3-year-old boy and put him up on the bench and said, you can drive the boat today. And everybody started videoing and taking photos, and here's Israel captaining the city ferry. Well, at least he thought he was. And fortunately, the guy was supervising, and he was captaining the ferry. He had a smile from ear to ear. But do you know what I found was really, really interesting in that moment? It wasn't just the 3-year-old that had fun that day. Every single person in that boat had fun. When we got to the other side, the whole boat was clapping and cheering. They were clapping and cheering because why? Because one man who could have thought his life was mundane and boring and there was nothing good about what he did, decided to have some fun, decided to find some joy in the moment and give some joy to somebody else. And do you know what? It transformed his experience and it transformed the experience of everyone else on that boat. 1 Timothy 6:17 says this, you have all you need to be joyful. Let me say this again. You have everything you need to be joyful. You don't need that thing to feel joy. Have you ever said to yourself, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I have that car, that house, that job, that person, that wife, that husband, that child, only to find that when you get that, you're still not happy because then you see somebody with a better house, car, wife, husband, child than you. Not me, of course, but you have everything you need to be joyful. It's a choice. It's a choice to say, you know what? It might be small, but what can I do to have some fun? What can I do to enjoy what's going on in this season? Are you still with me today? Number 3, if you want to get through the winters of your life well, if you want to experience them with joy, the third thing you can do is you can make somebody else's day. I have found that when I'm struggling in life, if I take my attention off myself and I put it on somebody else, I very quickly stop complaining about what's going on in my life. If I put my attention on helping somebody else have a great experience, somebody else have a good time of life, what happens is I stop focusing on myself. A number of years ago, I was a school teacher and I had a job in a school where I was the library teacher. And part of my job was to take the preps and the year ones for their library lesson. And so we would start the library lesson with a story, and then I would teach them how to borrow books, then I would help them find their books and check them out, etc., etc. Now, it was at a time in my life where I wanted to be doing something else. I actually didn't want to be teaching. I wanted to be preaching. I wanted to be a pastor. And I was working part-time as a pastor on weekends, and then the whole week I was working as a school teacher. And I can tell you, I wasn't the happiest. I had like an hour commute each way to the school that I was working at, and then I would have 20 prep and year one library lessons a week. Now, I like kids. I've got kids. But I would say that my preference for kids is when they're at an age where you can have like a meaningful conversation with them, all right? Preps year ones, I'm a little less adept than my wife at dealing with little children, okay? But I got 20 of these classes that I was doing every week. And every week I would have them sitting on the floor to read a story. And every week they would all want to sit closer to my leg than I felt comfortable. Some of them wanted to stroke the hair on my leg because they were fascinated at how hairy my legs were. I had to make a decision that even though I wasn't necessarily in the place that I thought I should be, even though I was doing a job that I wasn't necessarily thrilled about, I had a choice. I could actually make this a miserable experience for the children that I worked with, or I could make it a great experience for them. And so I decided to make it the best library lesson these kids had ever had. And we would pick these stories, and Mr. Stevenson would do all these funny characters and voices, and we would act out the story, and the kids would roll around the floor laughing, and they would think it was the funniest, most hilarious lesson they had had all week. And you know what? That brought joy to me. To see these kids happy, to see them enjoying even half an hour of school was a great thing. But one day it actually really hit home for me of how powerful it is when you actually help somebody else to enjoy life. You make somebody else's day. I was packing up the library at the end of the day, and an elderly gentleman came up to the library and he said, "Are you Mr. Stevenson?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I just want to say thank you." And I said, "Thank you for what, sir?" And he said, "My granddaughter is in your class. And she talks about you every single day. She says, Mr. Stevenson is the most fun, bestest teacher in the whole school. And I said, well, that's lovely. I'm so glad she enjoys the lesson. And he said, no, you don't understand. He said, this is not just about your library lesson. He said, my granddaughter has had probably one of the most difficult 6 years of her little life that any human being could have. She was born into a family where her parents were unable to care for her due to drug addiction. She was abused at a very young age. She has suffered more in 6 years than many adults have suffered in their whole life. And he said, you, sir, make her day every day. He said, you have helped her to enjoy school, to come out of her shell, to start relating to other people. And he said, and I just want to thank you because you're making a difference. And what I realized that day is that I actually wasn't doing that much. Do you know, I wasn't even aware of her situation. I just decided that in the moment where I could be miserable, I could be grumpy, I could be upset about the situation that I was in, I chose to make the day for those kids. And that had a knock-on effect that affected their lives in ways that many of them I will never know. But for that child, it made a world of difference. You see, one of the things that we can do is Proverbs 11:25 says, if you bless others, you will be blessed. If you refresh others, you will be refreshed. See, what it's teaching us to do is this: if we turn our outlook on life towards others instead of towards ourselves, what happens is not only do we enjoy life more, other people enjoy life more as well. You see, we live in a world where we are so consumed by our own needs, by our own wants, by our own struggles, by our own fears, by our own depressions, by our own anxieties. And I'm not minimizing any of that because Lord knows we all struggle. But there is a way, and this is what Jesus teaches, is there is a way of doing life that actually helps you to take the focus off yourself. And when you put it onto other people, what happens is it changes the way you feel inside. It changes the experience that you have of life on the inside. Luke 6:38 says this, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaking together, and running over, it will be poured into your lap. Now, if you've been around church for any length of time, you've probably heard this scripture used when they talk about the offering. And they say, give, and God will provide your financial needs. Well, I'm not opposed to that way of looking at it, but I would suggest that that goes for giving joy, that goes for giving a smile, that goes for giving a hug. That goes for giving love. If we go through life with an attitude of, I'm going to give first before I take for myself, I'm going to give to others, and then what we will find is it starts to come back to us, but not in the same portion, but what Jesus says, it will actually come to you pressed down, shaking together. That's an expression of the ancient people. They used to store their grain in clay jars, and to fit more grain in, they would press the grain down, and then they would shake it to fill all the gaps, and then they would pour some more in, and then they would keep on doing it. They would press and shake and pour some more in, and they would keep doing that until it was pouring over the sides. What Jesus is saying, if you live your life giving to others, if you live your life outward focused, what happens is that joy, that smile, that love, that experience comes back to you in a measure far greater. But my caution is this: the reverse is also true. If you give out hate, well, that's what comes back in double measure. If you give out misery, well, that's what comes back to you in double measure. If you give out an attitude of arrogance, or you give out an attitude of disdain for other people, well, that's what comes back to you. If you are struggling through experiences or relationships, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is ask yourself this: what am I giving out? Am I giving out love? Am I giving out hope? Am I giving out encouragement? Am I giving out peace? Or am I giving out the opposite? And if you want to turn around your experiences of the way that people treat you, start with how you treat other people. Learn to live with an attitude of giving out and doing for others. as you would have them do for you. Are you still tracking with me okay? Fantastic. And my last point is this: how to navigate the winters of your life. Number 4 is involve others in your experience. Genesis, the first book in the Bible, God creates the world and then he creates man. And he says these profound words. He says, it's not good for this guy to be alone. I'm going to create somebody else so that he has a companion. You see, right from the beginning of time, God understood that humankind function best when they're in relationship. Humankind function best when we're doing life with other people. We weren't meant to be isolated. We weren't meant to live by ourselves. We weren't meant to live alone. We were meant to be in community. And sadly, because of the nature of the society we live in, more and more people are isolated than ever before. You know, once upon a time, families would all live in the same village and the grandparents lived next to the grandchildren, and there would be aunties and uncles all lived within walking distance of each other. But now we're spread out across countries and continents and time zones. And, you know, with COVID even more so over the last 3 years, the level of isolation has been crippling. The incidence of mental illness and depression and anxiety has gone through the roof in the last 2 years. And I truly believe that the primary cause of that is isolation, loneliness. And if you're struggling to get through life, one of the things I would encourage you to do is get people around you. Not just any people though. Pick the people that you spend time with, because your life will become like the people that you spend the most time with. And so think about, well, who are the type of people I'd like to be around, and how can I find ways to be around people that are going to build me up, that are going to encourage me to, how do I involve other people in my experience? And do you know one of the wonderful things about church? I mean, whether you're a churchgoer or not, whether you've been around church very much or not, one of the greatest things about church is community. It's not so much about the singing and the preaching, although that can be good sometimes. It's the community. It's having people around you that you can do life with, who can encourage you, who can pick you up when you're feeling down, who can help to redirect you when you're making choices that are taking you in the wrong direction, who can be there to help you when you need help. It's about bringing people together, even when we live in a world where people are so far spread apart. You know, I have many people say to me that church, Sunday church, is the only time they get to spend with other people. You know, through the week, maybe they don't get to see family, or they work in an environment that they're a little bit isolated, or they don't have many good friends. And church is the one time of the week that they actually get to connect with other people and feel like somebody is a part of their life. Well, that's not by accident. That's the way God intended it. God intended for us to do life with other people. You know, Hebrews, the book of Hebrews says this: let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some is, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. What the writer of Hebrews is saying is this: sometimes it's easy to get out of the habit of connecting with others. We get busy, we get self-focused, we forget. And COVID has been good for this. You know, with online church, it's been really easy to just stay at home. And I want to speak to anybody that's online today. I'm not having a go at you. I'm glad that you're with us online, but I want to encourage you, never let online church be the substitute for actually being with people, because we were never meant to do life alone. You know, big technology is wonderful. Technology has helped us to connect in ways that we could have never connected with even 5 years ago. But it's never a substitute for being one-on-one. It's never a substitute for personal interaction and connection. And one of the things we need to do is we need to look for ways to involve other people in our experience. You know, something we do at this church is on Sunday afternoons about 5 o'clock, we have something called Hub Night. And Hub Night's not a service. It's not like a church service. What it is we just get together and we spend some time just talking about stuff that matters. We talk about stuff that people are going through. How do we do life better? How do we apply what the Bible says to our life to help us to navigate those challenges in our life? How do we learn more about what Jesus taught so that we can actually do life the way he intended us to do it? And we have some food and we have some coffee and then we're out by 6:30, but it's just a time to be intentional about connecting. And I want to encourage you, even if you don't come to Authentic Church normally, come tonight, 5 o'clock, Hub Night. It's a great way just to connect. It's a great way just to spend time with other people. Another way that we do it in church is we have life groups. Life groups are small groups that meet during the week in people's homes, in McDonald's. We have a couple of life groups that meet at the church, but they're just small groups of people that get together during the week and say, hey, how you doing? Can I pray with you? Let's tell some jokes. Elsa and Rick's group, it's mandated in their group that every week there has to be a segment where they're joke telling. They love jokes and they're good at them. And so they have all these jokes that they bring out and they just have a laugh together. And then they have a sing and then they have some coffee and some food and they just are intentional about getting together. If you'd like to be in a life group, I'd encourage you, go to the welcome desk and say, to help me find a life group. We've got life groups for all ages and stages of life. But be intentional about connecting with others. It is too easy to be disconnected from community. It's too easy to be disconnected from other people. But when we invite people into our situation, when we invite people to encourage us, what happens is it lifts us up. You know, I love Rick. Rick is like my spiritual dad. He's like a second dad to me. And Rick's around here a lot during the week. And, you know, whenever he's doing something, what I love about him is he always says to somebody, hey, come here, let me show you something. That's his standard line. Now, it doesn't matter whether he's sharpening a knife or starting a coal fire out in a bucket out the side or lifting boxes in the pantry or just having a cup of tea. He always invites somebody to sit with him. He says, hey, come here. Whether it's a young person who's in the church or whether it's me or my wife or somebody else, he's always saying, hey, come and do life with somebody else. And I love that. You know, we can all say that, can't we? We can all say, hey, come here, come and sit down. Let's have a coffee. Let's have a chat. Let's connect. Let's be intentional about involving other people in our life. Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really pray that message blessed you. If you enjoyed it, why don't you share it with a friend that you think will enjoy it also? And hit a like and give us a comment because we'd love to hear back from you. If you'd like to give to the work of Authentic Church or get more involved, head over to our website, authenticchurch.com.au. We look forward to seeing you next time.